everyone, and welcome back. Patricia and I are here this morning with another very special guest. We have Bernard Genge, who is a resilience, leadership, and management specialist. And today we're going to be talking about personal resilience and corporate trauma. So I'm very excited. Thanks, Bernard, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I'm going to sort of kick us off and maybe let's get to know you a little bit, Bernard. So do you want to share a bit about, your background, your story, and what brought you into the resilience field?
Yeah, sure. I started off my career as a medic in the Royal Navy many, many years ago, back in the late 70s. So I kind of give my age away a little bit here. And I found that part of our training was we had to go into the surgical ward, medical ward, EMT ward, casualty, and experience all these different specialities. And they were all fine. But where I really came to life was when I was asked to go and do some work in the psychology and psychiatry ward or department, because I found it fascinating what actually goes on in our minds and what makes us tick. And I was in the Royal Navy at the time of the Falklands conflict, and during and after the conflict, we had an awful lot of guys with what we now know to be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. At the time, remember this was only in the early 80s, we didn't really know what to do with these guys. We were giving them sleeping tablets, antidepressants, and saying, take some time off and you'll be fine. And the harsh reality was that for many of these guys, they were not fine. And a harrowing statistic that very few people are aware of is more guys took their own life after the conflict than what actually got killed in it. But what I found was that in working with some of these guys, we'd have two, and I'm using extreme examples here to help get the point across. We'd have two guys who were exposed to the same trauma, and one person would more or less say to me, do you know what, I realize how precious life is. I am going to make the very best of my life. I'm going to make the very best of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month that's granted to me. And another one would go on a journey of self-destruction, turn his life to drink and drugs and things like that. And it got me asking the question, really, that amazing resilience that one person could display, is that something that could be learned? And the answer to that question was yes, it could be learned. So there was two things that I really learned from that, was that if resilience can be learned, let me understand what resilience really is and help people build their resilience. And the second thing I learned from that is that we must not wait for a tragedy to happen, because there's a term that's called post-traumatic growth. And what that really means is that when we experience a traumatic event in our life, if we experience post-traumatic growth, we go through a process of coming back stronger than what we were before. But what I found was that almost exclusively the people that experienced this post-traumatic growth were the ones that prioritized the building of their resilience in the good times. They didn't wait until a tragedy or a tragic event happened. So that's the background to how my career has evolved. And then for the last 20 years, I've been working freelance in the area of kind of corporate leadership and management, which is also helping leaders and managers have a resilient approach to the way they do their work, and also now working a lot with organizations and helping the staff build their resilience, because it shot up the agenda, particularly in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. So does that give you a kind of flavor of my background and how I got really interested in, why we're here today, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Bernard, it's amazing because your experience is right there on the front line. And I imagine that you saw kind of just really horrific signs of traumatic symptoms, maybe, if you like to call it that. But, through our experiences, Laura and I, we've also seen how this can happen inside of organizations. With colleagues, navigating ourselves through this corporate environment, where sometimes the experiences can be quite negative and sometimes they can be really traumatic, because there's just nowhere for you to navigate except out. So when we talk about the concept of corporate trauma, What does that sound like to you or mean for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's. I think there's two kinds of trauma that you can experience in the workplace. One is a physical trauma, an accident or something like that. I'm not really going to address that because I think over the last 20, 30 years, the health and safety executive has been really good with that. And many sizable organizations now have specialist health and safety people, advisors on site. So that kind of area has been looked after pretty well. But it's a psychological trauma that has not really been addressed, that's coming onto the radar even more now. And there's a term called workplace PTSD that is beginning to be used at the current time. And I just think that's fascinating. Workplace post-traumatic stress disorder, because of what people are experiencing in the workplace. And I think if we're looking at it from an organizational perspective, I think there's many things that organizations should be thinking of. They should become acutely aware of when staff are under stress. Mm-hmm. And there's stress and anxiety. So leaders and managers in the workplace, they need to become aware of the signs. But also, you've got to think about the culture of the organization. Have you got a culture which allows bullying or inappropriate management behavior going on? Because please don't turn a blind eye to that if it is going on. It needs to be addressed. It will only get worse. And have you got a culture of very little consequence where, if leaders and managers are displaying bullying behavior, that it's not been dealt with, so there's no consequence to that. And also if staff are displaying inappropriate behavior and it's not being dealt with, that is a culture of no consequence. So the culture of organizations needs to be looked at. I think one of the big areas that I've found is that leaders and managers really don't know, many, and I'm not saying across the whole board, but many of them don't know the basics of management. They don't know how to give their staff feedback. They don't know how to give their staff mentoring and coaching support. They don't know which of their staff they should be giving clear direction to. They don't know which of their staff they should be hands off with and just letting them get on with it. And it's because it comes down to three things, really. The level, they'll call them the 3 C's, the level of competence, commitment, and confidence that each member of staff has. And let me just give you 2 extreme examples. You've got somebody with a high level of commitment, low level of competence, low level of confidence, because maybe they've just joined the organization. That person needs some very clear direction. They need to know the boundaries. They need their roles and responsibilities explained very clearly. And then they're going to need some coaching and mentoring support to build that confidence and competence. Then at the other end of the scale, you've got somebody with high levels of competence, commitment, and confidence, and you can be relatively hands-off. Too many leaders and managers manage in one single style. They have one style for everyone, and it simply doesn't work. So that's a big area for organizations to think about. Think about the leadership and management styles that your leaders and managers are using, and ensure that they are flexible with that, so that they are using a different style for different times and different people. So yeah, that's a lot of what I see in the workplace. A lot of it is based around culture, not dealing with conflict, unfairness, a lack of clarity over roles and responsibilities, the organization not giving the staff the training that they need, so that staff then make mistakes and then managers deal with it inappropriately. And of course, communication always comes up. It's nearly always a cause of stress in the workplace. And sometimes it's just a lack of the basics again. Leaders and managers not doing daily or weekly team briefings with their team just to keep them informed. Long hours, there's a lot of long hours that are expected of people. And then there's personal things, like some people are just very insecure, and and managers and leaders not dealing with those people in an appropriate way. So there's a lot to kind of think about, and my message really to organizations and HR people within organizations, is making sure your leaders and managers are aware of it, are aware of stress, anxiety, and if they see it going on, support people sooner rather than later. Please don't turn a blind eye to it.
That's so helpful. Thank you. I think that's that awareness and being able to really perceive the state that someone is in is so important, and that sort of emotional intelligence. It's not something that we really value in the workplace as much, but it's an astute skill.
Definitely, yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about, you talked a little bit about the organizational side and the leadership side. I'm curious, in your resilience workshops, what are some tactics that you coach individuals on? So if we have professionals, listening to this who are maybe experiencing stress or burnout, what are some tactics that they can take on to build their personal resilience?
Again, as similar to when I was talking about organizations, get to the root cause. If you are experiencing stress, anxiety in the workplace, get to the root cause of what's causing that. And let me share what I'm talking about here. Very often I hear people say to me, well, the cause of my stress, burnout and burnout is the way that people are speaking to me, the conflict that I'm experiencing in the workplace. Okay, that is not the real cause. The real cause, and this is quite harsh for some people to listen to, but the real cause is your inability to deal with conflict, because you're not assertive, you're not dealing with it, you're not nipping it in the bud, you're not going to the person who's talking to you inappropriately and being assertive and saying to them, I will not be spoken to in that way. I think it's important that we have a conversation, but please don't speak to me in that way. I don't allow anyone to raise their voice at me or to swear at me, or they have their own personal boundaries and they don't let people encroach them. So it's about understanding the real cause. People will say to me, I've got too much to do. That's not the real cause of your stress. The real cause of your stress, which you need to work with, is your inability to prioritize, to set yourself goals, to plan effectively, and to manage yourself. There's no such thing as time management. We can't manage time. We can only manage ourselves. It's about the decisions that you make with time that's granted to you. So it's about getting to the root cause of what's causing your stress and your anxiety. When you get to the root cause, you can then put strategies in place to put it right.
Thank you. That's so interesting. I think that's a really, really great take on, it's very tactical and very pragmatic, and that's something that everyone can take on. So what's behind the stress? What's behind the burnout? And is there something you can do to address the root cause?
Definitely, yeah.
What do you think, Patricia?
I mean, somebody who's going through trauma, sometimes there's no time limit on these things, and it's to avoid getting to that point, when your only route through is to resign, for example. So I love what you're suggesting here, that it is around maybe deciding what our values are, living a more purposeful life, talking into our boundaries a little bit more. Alongside that, there is a certain challenge, because I guess there's, in some sense, it feels like there's conditioning within an organization or conditioning within a society where you don't want to disrupt the rules or the status quo, or that's not what you've been taught to do, for example. And of course, this is why I think Laura and I are, having these kinds of tricky discussions, because how do we bring awareness to what it is that we can do as individuals and what it is that we can do as an organization. So what are some of the things that you've kind of recommend that organizations can do? I know you talked a little bit about what it is that they can do. So what have you seen, and kind of where is the real sticky, challenging points that they need to address?
Okay. I mean, for both individuals watching today and anyone who's working in the corporate sector, I'm going to give you one word to both take away from today, and that word is stop. And this is what stop means. So if you're thinking about this as an individual, S, stop, sit down for a moment. T, think. Have a think about what the real cause of your stress and anxiety is. O, observe. Observe how that stress and anxiety is making you feel. Observe what's happening to cause your stress and anxiety. And then P, plan. Put a plan in place to address it. Corporately, for those of you listening today, use the same analogy as you take away from this call today. Stop. So stop, sit down, have a think about what's happening in your organization. Observe. Just go up to, I say go down to the shop floor. You might not be a manufacturing company, but just go around your business and look, observe what's happening, see what's going on. We can't manage stress and anxiety from our offices. We need to go out onto the front line and see what's happening, see what the real causes are ourselves, and then we can plan. So that's my kind of takeaway there for organization. If you're a HR professional listening to this, stop, have a think about it, observe, go out and have a look around, see what's happening, talk to people, listen to people, and then put a plan together to address any stress and anxiety that's happening. And a lot of it will come down to, yes, supporting staff. Of course, we're all specialists in resilience. As I said right at the very beginning, resilience can be learned. So it's something, you can put a program together to help your staff build their resilience. But also very often it's about giving your leaders and managers some basic training on how to give feedback appropriately. So it's feedback that helps people grow, basic coaching and mentoring, knowing which of their staff they should give direction to, which ones they should mentor, which ones they should coach, and which ones they should be very dedicative with and be hands off. So, it may be that you do need some training in those areas for your leaders and staff, but get to the root cause first. And that's why I say, stop, think, observe, go and have a look around, and then put a plan together.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I mean, if you don't know the root cause, then you don't know how to address it. And I think that analogy of taking a breath, seeing what's going on and making a decision, making a plan is absolutely applicable for individuals and for organizations. So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us today and your story and how individuals can take accountability over their stress and burnout, but also how we can start to empower leaders and managers and organizations to create cultures that really support their people and promote this stress-free and efficient working environment. Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Patricia, did you have anything else you wanted to ask or share?
Well, Bernard, I think you've got such a wealth of experience, and you've probably only touched on a couple of aspects for us. So, yeah. I mean, is there anything that you've seen or anything else that you want to add as kind of a key takeaway here?
Not really. I mean, the only thing, just to really reiterate, getting to the root cause and dealing with the root cause. And just to finish with a little story, I'm not going to name the organization, but I was working with an organization, a big organization, and they asked me to deliver assertiveness workshops for their staff, which also included some conflict resolution skills. What I found was that as I was delivering these workshops for this organization, some of the staff coming on them were so frustrated, they were actually prepared to share names of the people, the leaders and managers who were practicing bullying behavior. And because of the consistent feedback that I was getting, I went to the organization and said, we're not addressing the root cause. You're sticking a sticking plaster on this, and I'm very happy to continue to deliver these assertiveness workshops for you, if that's what you want me to do. But I don't think with I'm having to charge you for doing this, and I think the money should be going towards dealing with the root cause and the real issue, which is you've got a number of leaders and managers who are displaying bullying behavior, and we need to deal with that. The answer from that organization was, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Bernard, but carry on delivering the assertiveness workshop. They wanted to tick the box to say that they've done something. They never got to the root cause. And do you know what? It's getting worse. It's not getting better. It gets worse. So that's why, just to reiterate once again, get to the root cause, and then we can deal with the root cause together.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, there's a huge amount of social and corporate responsibility that organizations face nowadays, particularly through social media, where the Great Resignation, I guess, is one aspect of people resigning to find something new or to relax and recharge. And all the letters to the CEO around complaints within the culture of the organization, these are becoming more prolific. So actually the way, the current state of the world and everything needing to change provides a definite opportunity for organizations to think about the consequences, as you mentioned, the consequences and the accountability of their actions. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the work you do, Bernard. Do you want to share anything around where people can find you if they want to learn more about you and your practice?
Well, I mean, obviously they can contact me via yourselves. I have a Facebook group that's dedicated to personal resilience. It's called Ignite. Find your passion, live your purpose, and rewrite your future. There's a lot of free resources on there. If people want to join that, under the guides section, there's a number of free resources. And every Friday we do a live video on there on a subject related to personal resilience. There's 1,000 members in it currently, so it's a pretty active group. And so if anyone wants a free resource for just supporting them, building their own personal resilience, I'd say go to the Facebook group and join that and just enjoy the resources that are there.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll link to that in our video notes as well, so people can find it very easily.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks again for being here. And Patricia, thanks for being my co-pilot again. And we'll hopefully have another conversation one day, Bernard. It's great.
Yeah. If your audience like what they've heard today, I'd be very happy to come back and do more at a future date for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.